Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. In Austria, a ladder from 1968 finally lets go. In France, a regulator jams open 500 meters in. And in Croatia, one clip lands on the wrong rope. As always, viewer discretion is advised. This is Cavern Depths. The first story begins now, and it starts the way they all do, with a plan. On February 21st, 2026, Karl Moser and Renata Fuchs stood in the cold mouth of the Hirlatzhoehle, the longest cave in Austria. 113 kilometers of galleries wound through the Dachstein like veins through marble. You do not conquer a cave like this. You visit for 12 hours, politely, and you leave when it says so. Karl was 46, a Hallstatt carpenter who had climbed these galleries for 20 years, a man who tested every hold twice because wood had taught him what age does to things that bear weight. Renata was 50, a retired ski patroller who had trained half the region's rescuers, and who had promised her daughter she would never cave without a med kit heavier than her lunch. Her habit was the joint count: shoulders, elbows, knees, every trip, a patroller's inventory of the things that fail first. The Hirlatz is a labyrinth of climbs and traverses where the old routes still carry the ironmongery of earlier generations, bolted by men who are now names on plaques. The plan was a 12-hour classic, 4 kilometers in along the main gallery, up the old ladder series to the fossil levels, photographs at the Great Chamber, and back out the same way before midnight. What they didn't know, the plan ran over a ladder that had been quietly dying since 1968. They dropped into the first gallery at 8 in the morning, boots crunching frost 100 meters inside the door. The first hours ran like a museum tour, drips ticking off stone, ropes creaking on the warm-up climbs, lamp beams sliding over survey markers older than either of them. At the base of the ladder series, 4 hours in and on schedule, Karl put his hand on the first cold rung the way he greeted old timber. What he didn't know, 11 meters above him, one weld had been rusting through since before he was born. 40 meters up the series, that is, when 1968 finally failed, because the rung under Karl's right hand tore out of its rail with a crack like a rifle, and his weight swung out over the dark on one arm and a tether. The tether held. The shoulder did not. It came out of its socket with a sound Renata heard from 6 meters below, and his scream went down the shaft ahead of the falling rung. Here is what you need to understand about old fixed aid. A ladder in a cave corrodes in the dark on its own schedule, for 58 years if it must. Every caver who climbs it is load testing a museum piece. The result arrives in 1 second, and this is where trusting another generation's ironmongery gets expensive. So what do? One-armed on a dying ladder 40 meters up. You do not climb down. You hang on your tether, and you let the patroller below you go to work. Panic pulled at the dead arm anyway. The rung had failed. The shoulder was out. The dark stayed patient. Because this is the arithmetic of a dislocation at depth. An arm out of its socket loses strength by the minute. The muscles clamp tighter every quarter hour. And a reduction that takes 1 minute in the first 10 takes a surgeon after 6 hours. Watch 30 ski seasons of shoulders pay their dividend. Renata climbed the parallel rope line to his ledge, clipped him to the wall on 2 points, and talked him through it in the flat patroller's voice she used on frightened skiers. Arm loose, breathe out, let it hang heavy. Then the slow external rotation, done by feel in lamplight, and at the third breath the joint went back in with a clunk they both felt through the rock. Put yourself on that ledge for 1 minute of it. An arm that has stopped being yours, a ladder you no longer trust in either direction. And the arithmetic of 4 kilometers of gallery between your one good hand and the door. Would you have let a partner pull on it, 40 meters up? He did, because she had done it 90 times on snow. The exit took 9 hours. She rigged every climb down, lowered his packs, and strapped the arm to his chest with the sling from the promised medkit. They walked out under their own power at 1 in the morning, and the rescue roster staged at the entrance met them with soup instead of a stretcher. The club report recorded a rung that finally failed after 58 years. a shoulder reduced on the wall at the 10-minute mark, and a self-rescue it ruled exemplary. The latter series is condemned now, stripped and rebolted for rope, and every fixed installation in the cave carries a dated inspection tag. The longest cave in Austria still winds its 113 kilometers through the Dachstein. Test every hold twice, Carl still tells the club, and never lend your weight to another generation's iron. The report recorded 9 hours from failure to daylight. Both cavers walked out, and the medkit weighs more than ever. You're watching Cavern Depths, and this is the second story of the night. On April 12, 2026, Marie Lacoste and Julien Perrault slipped off the bank of the Selle River into the Emergence du Ressel, one of the longest cave dive traverses in France, a stone tunnel running cold and clear under the oak woods of the Lot. Divers cross Europe for this entrance, and the cave does not care how far you came. The water was 11 degrees of glass. Marie was 30, a Marseille instructor who had logged 400 cave dives, the kind of diver who trims her kit until nothing dangles and nothing rattles. Julien was 34, a quiet Lyon engineer who had promised his wife the same rule every season. Thirds on the gas, no exceptions, not once. His habit was the valve drill. Every dive, before the water, eyes shut, one hand finding every valve on his back in under 10 seconds. The Ressel is a highway of a cave, a broad gold line, 400 meters of gallery to the first shaft, junctions signed like a road system. Familiarity is its gift, and familiarity is its trap. The plan was 500 meters in on the main line at 18 meters depth, 40 minutes bottom time on double 12s, turn on thirds, home. What they didn't know, a grain of grit had ridden into Julien's regulator on the springtime flood, and it was waiting at the 500-meter mark. The first leg ran like the postcard, regulators hissing their steady rhythm, bubbles gurgling along the ceiling, the gold line humming past white stone walls. 200 bar became 170, on schedule, the arithmetic of a good day. At the 500-meter mark, Marie tied her marker on the line and turned the dive, on plan, on thirds. What she didn't know, Julien's next breath was the one the grit had been waiting for. That is when his regulator jammed open, because the seat the grit had scored finally failed, and the mouthpiece in his teeth turned into a fire hose of his own gas, roaring silver into the ceiling. A free flow does not leak, it empties. His gauge began to fall like a dropped stone, 60 bar a minute, 500 meters from the sky. Here is what you need to understand about a free flow in a cave. In open water, you surface and curse. In a cave, the surface is a lie, the ceiling is stone, and this is where the rule of thirds stops being a briefing slide and becomes the only bank you can draw on. So what do you do when your own tank is trying to empty itself? You breathe the flood while it lasts, you shut the failed post down, and you put your hand on your partner. Panic wanted a faster fin kick. The regulator had failed. The gauge kept falling. The exit stayed long. Because this is the arithmetic of shared gas. 2 divers on one set of tanks burn it almost twice as fast, and 500 meters at a calm pace is 14 minutes, and 14 minutes of 2 men's breathing is exactly what Marie's thirds were built to hold. Watch a valve drill practiced blind pay for itself in the dark. Julien's hand went over his shoulder and shut the roaring post in 6 seconds, eyes open this time, while Marie pressed her spare regulator into his palm. They locked forearms for one breath, the signal passed, and then they swam, linked to one set of tanks, her gauge doing the arithmetic for 4 lungs. Put yourself on that line for 1 minute of it. A regulator screaming itself empty behind your shoulder, your partner's gas in your mouth, and the arithmetic of 110 bar shared between 2 heart rates, falling every meter of a tunnel you cannot leave through the roof. How calm can you keep 4 lungs? Exactly as calm as your training, and not one breath calmer. The green haze of the entrance arrived at minute 13, and they surfaced into the Selle with 40 bars still in the bank. They floated by the oak bank for 10 minutes, saying almost nothing, watching the bubbles of the dead regulator still rising from the entrance pool like the cave exhaling. The incident report recorded a first-stage failure at 500 meters of penetration, a post shut in 6 seconds, an air share executed without a single dropped signal, and an exit on thirds with margin to spare. The regulator went to the workshop, and the grain of grit that failed it sits taped to the club notice board above one word: thirds. One of the longest cave dive traverses in France still runs cold and clear under the oaks. Thirds, no exceptions, not once, Julian still tells his wife, and now she knows exactly what the rule bought. The report recorded 14 shared minutes. Both divers surfaced, and the drill is taught eyes open and eyes shut. You're watching Cavern Depths, and tonight's final story is the one they still talk about. On August 2nd, 2026, Ivana Horvat and Petar Novak crossed the cold karst of the Velebit to the entrance of Lukina Jama, the deepest cave in Croatia, a stone throat that swallows 1,431 meters of rope, ice, and darkness. The mountain here is bone white and silent. The cave under it is a vertical country. Ivana was 35, a Zagreb expedition caver who had rigged big pitches on 3 continents, famous in her club for checking every anchor with 2 tugs and a look. Petar was 31, her rope partner of 6 seasons, a steady climber who had promised his mother a postcard from every expedition and who carried the stamps in a zip bag inside his helmet. His habit was the buddy check at every pitch head. Your gear, my gear, every trip. 30 seconds neither of them had ever skipped. Lukina is a ladder of enormous shafts stacked one under another, rigged with traverse lines that walk you along the walls between drops. The plan was a supply run to the camp at 520 meters. 8 pitches down, duffels handed over, 12 hours door to door. What they didn't know, the trip would end at the 4th pitch head, on a ledge with 2 ropes and 1/2 second. The first pitches ran like a freight schedule, racks hissing, duffels creaking on their tethers, stones clattering into depths that returned no echo. They moved the way 6 seasons of 1 rope teaches 2 people to move. At hour 3, they reached the 4th pitch head, on schedule, a wide ledge where the traverse line and the pitch rope's long tail lay side by side across the rock. What she didn't know, after 400 pitch heads, her hand was about to act without her. Reaching the ledge with a duffel on her hip, that is when the routine failed her, because her cowstail found a rope and clipped it, and the rope it found was the slack tail of the pitch line, not the anchored traverse, and both look identical in the cone of a lamp. She unweighted her descender, leaned back, and the tail ran free through her carabiner. Petar was 4 meters away, close enough to see it and 1/2 second too late to touch it. Here is what you need to understand about a pitch head transfer. For 2 seconds you are attached to your own choice and nothing else. The rope does not test what you meant, it tests what you clipped. And this is where 400 flawless pitch heads become the reason the next one goes unchecked. So what does the 1/2 second hold? Nothing. That is its horror. No creak, no warning, no margin to spend. Just a lean and the dark doing arithmetic. Panic arrived after physics. The clip had failed her. The ledge was empty. His shout fell 40 meters behind her. Because this is the arithmetic of a free fall in a shaft. 40 meters is under 3 seconds, and 3 seconds is shorter than any human decision, and the buddy check that catches it takes 30 and has to come first. Watch the worst radio call a partner can make travel up a kilometer of rope. Petar descended the pitch rope to her, and the deepest cave in Croatia became very small. 1 lamp, 1 ledge of breakdown, 1 pulse he could not find. He wrapped her in both survival blankets, said her name once, and then he climbed, 4 pitches on shaking arms,
to the depth where the expedition phone line reached the surface. Put yourself on that ledge for 1 minute of it. A rope tail hanging quiet as evidence, a helmet with postcard stamps inside it, and the arithmetic of 30 seconds against half a second, the check they always did against the once they didn't. What would you have clipped, tired, at hour 3, with a duffel pulling your hip? You would have clipped what your hand found. That is the whole lesson. The Croatian Cave Rescue Service put 30 cavers underground within 12 hours, rigging counterweights down the shaft ladder through the night. They brought Ivana Horvat up through the great shafts over 2 days, hand over hand past the anchors she had rigged herself, and the mountain gave no echo back the whole way. The inquiry recorded a cow stale clipped to a pitch rope tail mistaken for the traverse line, a fall of 40 meters, and death on impact, and it ruled against nobody, because the error it described lives in every tired hand on Earth. Pitch heads in Lukina now carry color-taped traverse lines, and the buddy check is written into the expedition handbook in her own words. Your gear, my gear, every trip. The deepest cave in Croatia still stacks its shafts 1,400 meters into the velebit. The rope tests what you clipped, not what you meant, the club teaches now. The report recorded that Ivana died in a 40-meter fall at the 4th pitch head. The recovery took 2 days, and Petar mailed the last postcard himself.